I haven't enjoyed a Tarantino movie this much since Pulp Fiction, which is kinda ironic since Once Upon a Time in Hollywood isn't what you'd call a straight up Tarantino movie until like 45 minutes from the end. Go figure. So this could be Tarantino's masterpiece, really. A movie that absolutely feels like it was made in the period in which it was set, just a little, I don't know, Tarantinized, I guess. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood simultaneously both this reverential look at and great honking satire of that weird point in the golden age of Hollywood in which TV began to rise to household dominance, westerns were all the rage, and Roman Polanski could still walk freely on American soil. And it's great, really great. Just to be clear though, it's not a Tarantino movie, it's still got the fetishized feet shots, that particular style of dialogue, the lengthy driving sequences, all that jazz, but there's the faintest hint of restraint for at least 2/3 of this movie that rather refreshingly shows off Tarantino the filmmaker rather than Tarantino the personality, which, I'll be honest, is not something I can easily enjoy usually. I'm being upfront about that. I think all but 4 of his movies are pretty good, but for me, a little QT goes a long way. Once Upon a Time's largely unconcerned with plot, instead it's really more of a hangout flick, a sort of few weeks in the life of kind of a tale that follows various characters with either direct or tertiary connections to the film industry and, well, history, that you could absolutely chop down to self-contained shorts were it not for a finale that ties all these elements together. The main thrust of that story, though, concerns Leonardo DiCaprio as Rick Dalton, a fading movie star now confined to the annals of television westerns and desperate to use that platform to catapult himself back into the critical and commercial spotlight. Like Timothy Olyphant, if he'd ever actually caught on with movie audiences. Though amusingly, Olyphantastic, as Kevin Smith once named him, does actually turn up here. Meanwhile, there's Brad Pitt as Leo's BFF/driver/stuntman/Vietnam vet Cliff Booth, who's on the outs with the industry because of a rather amusing misconception about himself and winds up crossing paths with a group of weird hippie chicks who set up camp on his and Rick's old western filming ranch. And then there's Margot Robbie as Rick's new neighbor Sharon Tate, who finds herself caught up in the wonder of her emerging stardom and her first big role. All 3 performances are superb, beyond that even. In fact, there's a moment you'll have caught in the trailer in which Rick's told he's delivered the best acting his co-star's ever seen, and I gotta be honest, I genuinely began to wonder. I mean, it's Leo, dude, it probably could be. Robbie's got a perfect balance of wide-eyed charm without seeming too spacey about it, and when Brad Pitt remembers to turn on the fun, goddamn, hell of a supporting cast too. Bruce Dern, Luke Perry, Michael Madsen, Kurt Russell, the real-world answer to Vincent Chase, Emile Hirsch, Scoot McNairy, Lena Dunham, Al Pacino, good god, even Damian Lewis as Steve McQueen. Now that's a roster, though it's curtailed just a smidge by the rather visible reality that even though his buddies have all aged out of his shtick, he can just nepotistically roster up their kids for background roles instead. So Smith's daughter Harley Quinn's in there, Bruce's daughter Rumor, and of course Uma's daughter Maya, who, to be fair, was an absolute scene stealer in Stranger Things recently. Ultimately, everyone outside of that poster trio gets what amounts to a glorified cameo, serving more as the background seasoning of Tarantino's take on the sun-drenched Hollywood of the 60s than fully fledged characters in their own right, which is fine within the context of the film, really, and doesn't feel in any way like a shortcoming, quite the opposite. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood easily represents the single most fully fleshed out world, for want of a better term, than literally any Tarantino flick has ever managed before. It runs a tad long at 15 minutes short of the 3-hour mark, but for how densely it's put together and the flow that quickly emerges in it, you actually don't really find yourself particularly cognizant of that runtime until literally the signposted third act, at which point the Tarantino of yesteryear re-emerges to indulge literally everything that ever made him poster fodder for a sports science student's hall of residence bedroom wall. That being said though, because it's so earned by that point, it ends up being pretty damn fun. Crass, hyper-violent OTT, and literally the best way Tarantino's balanced since, I don't know, the first Kill Bill. You could actually go so far as to call Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a sort of a Kill Bill in reverse, as if you somehow switched the volumes round and watched the second one, the better one, first. But since I bring up Kill Bill, we should probably mention the whole Bruce Lee controversy, which, if you know about it from film reporting, has been insanely blown out of proportion, and if you don't, I won't spoil it, except to say I thought it was hilarious and completely in keeping with the bravado of that man at that time, and involves a statement he totally made. Come on, there are books on this shit. Well, just go and watch the goddamn Bruce Lee biopic. Dragon, the good one, not the piece of crap one about his imaginary white friend Billy Magnuson. That happened, and we let it happen. Anyway, it's the scene I probably most took away with me after this movie, and Mike Moe from Empire is pretty damn perfectly cast as the man himself. Look, your mind's already made up on whether or not you want to see the new Tarantino movie, same as it always is. This probably isn't going to sway you, but for what it's worth, I absolutely think this might be Tarantino's best movie, at least since Pulp Fiction. And the kind of person who doesn't do this dog and pony show for a living and still races out to see every new movie he makes anyway is doubtless going to have the time of their lives, and rightly so. For me, it's a 4-star time. I can't wait to see this again. I love the DiCaprio-Brad Pitt buddy dynamic. I adored that Bruce Lee scene. Some good fun with Kurt Russell. Al Pacino doesn't suck, which might be a first for this century, and the third act had me whooping and cheering like a sycophant. Absolute must-see. Get on down to Hollywood. I know, right? And I'm hardly an easy lay for a Tarantino flick. I am, however, the easiest for a good, solid, R-rated coming-of-age comedy. As in Good Boys, which also opens this week. This is effectively Superbad for tweens, with a trio of wayward 12-year-old youths played by Jacob Tremblay, Brady Noon, and Keith L.Williams. The crack here is that Tremblay's character gets invited to his first kissing party, scores the other two an invite, and then freaks out that he doesn't know how to kiss. If you imagine he stole the character from Room, it adds a whole extra dimension to that, incidentally. Anywho, he and his buddies swipe his dad's drone to spy on the sexually amorous teens next door, and wind up going on a wild ride across the city in order to try and get it back and, well, get to the party. I mean, that's the plot, but like Superbad or even Booksmart recently, it's entirely nothing to do with the destination, and everything instead to do with the comedic journey, which really delivers. Good Boys is damn good fun. I laughed my ass off. It's basically essential comedic fodder for anyone who's ever been a 12-year-old boy. It's obscenely R-rated too. It packs in everything from some pretty hearty porn gags to using anal beads as nunchucks. It's hysterical at times. Tremblay's as good in a comedy as he is in a drama or whatever the Book of Henry was meant to be, other than terrible. Brady Noon's the token alpha persona and manages to make a decently fun run of it, and Keith Williams gets to be a sort of mini Craig Robinson voice of reason type with some pretty solid results. They're a good trio. Tremblay laps the other two. I mean, he survived Book of Henry, that kid's bulletproof, but they're a likable lineup. The relationship between them's quite endearing, and even the more ridiculous elements do somehow feel weirdly relatable in their hands. I mean, who didn't run across a motorway as a kid, huh? Some badass appearances from folk like Will Forte, Retta, Stephen Merchant. And it's a pretty sturdy directorial debut for Gene Stupnitsky, who was a writer on The Office, the better one, and that Stephen Merchant show Hello Ladies, which was killed off way before its time. It's just a good time romp for anyone who's either actually that age or still enough of a man-child to properly remember being that age. Not for everyone, it's got a tiny bit more of a gender bias than even Superbad managed, but so worth seeing and enjoying. 3 stars, and now that I've remembered seeing Book of Henry, I'm gonna go and have a little cry, man. F*** that movie. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.